Autumn, 2011, University of Virginia. A team of psychologists ran an experiment that quietly destroyed something almost everyone believed about attraction. They showed women a series of Facebook-style male profiles. Some women were told these men had already said they liked them. Others were told something different. Uncertain, maybe interested, maybe not. Guess who won? The uncertain group rated the men as more attractive. Not slightly, not a small bump, a measurable, significant jump, and they admitted thinking about these men more often for longer, with a low-grade obsession they couldn't even explain to the researchers. Ride that again. Certainty, the exact thing we assume builds connection, killed it. And that opens a bigger question than one study can answer. Why is the human brain almost engineered to want what it can't immediately have? Why do some people walk into a room and pull everyone's attention without doing anything at all? Stay with me, because by the end of this you'll understand the actual machinery behind that pull. Not dating advice, not TikTok folklore. The real science of status, scarcity, and desire. The same forces that shaped human mating behavior since before civilization existed. And you'll understand exactly why the calmest person in the room is often the most dangerous one to your attention. Here's a scene. Two men, same party. One moves fast, compliments lined up, eyes locked on one woman across the room, phone out before the night even ends, mind already made up about how tonight has to go. The other barely seems to notice anyone. He talks, he laughs, he leaves when he feels like leaving. To anyone watching, the first man looks confident, the second looks like he doesn't care. But ask any woman in that room 3 days later who she's still thinking about. It's almost never the first one. Why? This isn't a dating myth. It's a documented psychological pattern. And to understand why it happens, you have to go back further than nightclubs and dating apps. Back to something biologists call costly signaling DONC 1975. An Israeli biologist named Amat Zahavi proposed an idea that sounded backwards. Extravagant, wasteful traits, a peacock's tail, a stag's antlers, survive evolution because they're wasteful. A peacock, dragging feet of iridescent feathers, is a walking liability. Harder to fly, easier to catch, expensive to grow. But that's the entire point. Only a genuinely strong, resourceful animal can afford that handicap and still survive it. The tail isn't decoration, it's proof. Zahavi called it the handicap principle, and decades of research since have found the same logic hiding, in a much quieter form, inside human behavior. Humans don't grow tails. We signal value through something else. Composure, restraint, the visible fact that our attention isn't desperately needed somewhere else. Here's where it gets interesting. Psychologist David Buss ran a landmark study in 1989, surveying mate preferences across 37 cultures on 6 continents. And across wildly different societies, one pattern kept repeating. Women valued signals of resource and status, but not the resource itself. What mattered was proof the resource wasn't desperately needed. Think about that. A man visibly chasing, visibly anxious, visibly available to anyone who'll have him is broadcasting the opposite of scarcity. He's advertising free time nobody's competing for. And whether we like it or not, the brain reads that as low value. But chasing doesn't just fail to attract, it actively repels, through a second mechanism entirely. In the 1980s, psychologist Robert Cialdini identified something called the scarcity principle. People assign more value to things that appear limited, less to things that appear unconditionally available. This isn't unique to romance. It's why limited edition sells out, and the unlimited version sits on the shelf. It's why an empty restaurant feels suspicious, and a line out the door feels like proof of quality. Apply that same wiring to a person, and something uncomfortable becomes obvious. A man who pursues too hard is, without realizing it, marketing himself as unlimited stock. Now here's the twist beneath the twist. Restraint only works when it's real. This is the exact misunderstanding that built an entire industry of dating gurus selling fake indifference. Manufactured detachment doesn't fool anyone because it isn't detachment at all. Attachment researchers, building on the work of John Bowlby, have shown that what reads to other people as genuine calm isn't a performance. It's the visible byproduct of someone whose self-worth isn't hostage to one outcome. Bowlby's attachment theory, originally built to explain how infants bond with caregivers, later extended into decades of research on adult relationships, found that people with secure attachment approach connection without the anxious urgency insecure attachment produces. They're not strategically withholding interest. They genuinely don't need the relationship to complete them. And that absence of need is exactly what other people are unconsciously scanning for. So who are these people, really? Not cold, not uninterested. Usually the opposite, deeply engaged, fully present, just unwilling to abandon their own life, friendships, or ambitions for one uncertain outcome. That's a harder discipline than it looks. It means tolerating the exact uncertainty that made the 2011 study's subjects so obsessed without collapsing into the anxious pursuit that destroys it. And this pattern doesn't just show up at parties. It runs through history everywhere status and courtship intersect. Aristocratic courts, where visible eagerness was a social liability, traditional matchmaking systems across Asia and the Middle East that deliberately built scarcity and formality into courtship, the long anthropological record of human pair bonding, where visible restraint has repeatedly tracked with perceived social rank. It would be easy to turn this into a legend, the cold, untouchable alpha male who wins simply by not caring. That myth is popular. It's also almost entirely wrong. What the evidence actually supports is narrower and far more interesting. Not indifference, internal security. Not manipulation, the genuine absent desperation. Evolutionary psychology, attachment research, and behavioral economics all converge on the same, less cinematic but far more useful truth. Value was never performed through withdrawal. It's revealed through a person's relationship with themselves. Pursuit simply exposes whether that relationship was secure to begin with, which brings us to the deeper pattern underneath all of this. Because none of it was really about dating. It's about the oldest signaling problem in biology. How do you prove real quality in a world full of cheap claims? Peacocks solved it with feathers. Stags solved it with antlers that cost them energy and risk. Humans solved it with something almost nobody notices happening in real time. The simple, visible fact of not needing you. Every unnecessarily eager text. Every abandoned plan. Every dropped boundary chasing approval. Each one is a tiny handicap signal, broadcast without the sender ever realizing it. And every person who stays whole, who keeps their life exactly as full as it would be without you in it, is making the oldest, most convincing argument evolution ever designed. So, the next time you notice someone who seems to want nothing from you, and yet somehow ends up occupying more of your thoughts than the person chasing hardest, understand it isn't a trick. It isn't coldness, it's a signal older than language, older than courtship rituals, older than the idea of romance itself. The most convincing proof of value was never what someone told you they could offer you. It was the quiet, undeniable evidence that they were already whole, long before you walked in.